Well, hello, everyone. I'm Brooks Rayford, president of the North Carolina Technology Association, or NC Tech. I want to welcome you to our quarterly Government Vendor Network session, and thanks for tuning in to this virtual format. For those who are new, these sessions are an opportunity for us to invite public sector leaders to come share their activities and priorities with their current and potential business partners. As most of you know, we're fortunate to have had the expertise of the Brooks Pierce Law Firm for many years as our legislative counsel, led by Ed Turlington, along with his colleague, Matt Bales. After our guest speakers segment, Ed will offer a brief legislative overview to close out our session, and we'll also include a copy of that when we send out a follow-up email to all registrants. First, a few quick announcements. As you can imagine, we've converted a number of existing programming to virtual sessions, and we're adding new content all the time as well. Last month, we hosted our inaugural Diversity and Inclusion in Tech Summit, which exceeded all of our projections in terms of registration and media attention. And just last week, we hosted our annual State of Technology Conference, also virtually, with a great participation rate. Both of these conferences were recorded, including the concurrent breakout sessions, so anyone who was registered can log in for up to 60 days after the adjournment and watch any or all of the content at their convenience. If you didn't have a chance to register for one or both of these summits but would like to access the content, we'll include links to both of them in the follow-up email. We've also launched an NC Tech Talk series where I have virtual fireside chats with various leaders. These are free to our members to register for, and we also offer a sponsorship slot for each one, so be sure to check out the past and future sessions. We actually have one coming up tomorrow. I'll include a link to that as well in our follow-up. And lastly, an update about the annual NC Tech Awards. This is a two-part offering each year. The first is the summer application and nomination window, where companies and individuals are submitted or apply directly for the various awards that are available. Then later in the fall, we usually host a gala event to celebrate the finalists and to announce the winners. This year, we'll be converting that awards program to a virtual one, so stay tuned for that. But the application and nomination period is functioning the same as usual, and it's open right now. You have until August the 18th to nominate another organization or individual or to apply directly. So be sure to have someone in your organization submit applications for any awards your company wishes to be considered for. All the details are at nctech.org/awards. Now for a quick word of introduction for today's session. Since we're not together in person, please begin submitting brief questions for our guest speakers by using the Q&A feature while they're speaking, and I'll try to work them in as time permits when we get to the Q&A part. If you have technical difficulties, use the chat feature and our team will respond to those. But again, for questions, use the Q&A function. That's what we'll be monitoring for questions to pose to our guests. So with that, let me thank the sponsor of today's session, Cisco, a longtime and very supportive member of NC Tech. Please welcome Dave Denny, who will say a few words of greeting and introduce our guest speakers. David?
Thank you, Brooks. Cisco is pleased to be the sponsor of today's session for NC Tech Government Vendor Network. As you know, Cisco is a provider of the Internet of Things, as well as security, networking, and telephony needs. And we have about 6,000 people employed here in the state of North Carolina. And we work very closely with the state, so we appreciate the opportunity, Brooks, to work with NC Tech and be a sponsor for this event. Today, we are honored to have with us Eric Boyette, the Secretary for the North Carolina Department of Transportation, along with the department's Chief Information Officer, Frank Wynn. Both of these gentlemen are familiar with NC Tech. Eric, of course, is formerly the state CIO, and both of our guests today have been part of our programming from time to time. I am pleased to say that Department of Transportation is a member of NC Tech. Secretary Boyette actually began his career with North Carolina DOT and over time held several leadership positions, including the state CIO, Inspector General, Commissioner of DMV. Governor Cooper appointed Eric as secretary earlier this year. Frank Wynn joined the Department of Transportation in 1999, has been the CIO of the department since 2018. Prior to that, he was the Director of Engineering Transportation Systems. We've invited Secretary Boyette and Mr. Nguyen to share with us a bit about their roles, some of their tech initiatives, and priorities with the Department of Transportation. And I'm sure something about the COVID-19 impact on the department. My colleagues at Cisco and I are pleased to welcome our fellow NC Tech members, Secretary Eric Boyette and Frank Nguyen, to North Carolina Tech today.
How do you want to proceed?
We can hear you now.
We can hear you now, Secretary Boyette.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Brooks, and thank you, Dave, for. And I'm glad they actually gave you a canned message so you couldn't go off script and talk about Frank and I. But for your partnership, I know you and Brooks both. My previous role as Secretary of DOT, it was great to work with both of you and continue to support you even at the Transportation Agency as well. I want to start by just talking about our agency a little bit, the structure. A lot of you, may not be aware of, we're a very large agency that, we have our Global Transport in Kinston. We have our Ports Authority in Wilmington and Moorhead, and we also have an inward port in Charlotte. So we have those facilities. We also have our Turnpike facility that is under our agency. We have aviation, we have rail, we have bike and ped. So when you compare North Carolina to other states, not many states that have the breadth of depth that we do as far as when you look at transportation. You think about transportation as a whole, we control and manage all of that for the state, and also our ferry system, which we recently pushed our passenger ferry back out, which was glad for our residents down east. So that has really been, for me, coming back and looking at the agency and, trying to understand, if you look at our transportation needs in the future and what does that look like for us. One of the things, if you talk about, just technology in general, you talk about drones. And I think Brooks mentioned COVID. One of the things that we did, and I was proud of our aviation division, they reached out and started working with our FAA partners around waivers to work with Zipline, Novant Health in the Charlotte area around, how do we deliver testing of COVID testing to, our facilities that are responding to those tests, and how can we do that safely? How can we do that effectively? And also working with our, the first responders, the airports, and, just the public in general, to let them know, when you see these drones flying overhead that are delivering these critical mission supplies, that it is going on. So we're proud of that. It's really something that's expanding. Raleigh Wake Med is really looking at it for their Garner campus. We've had a lot of interest from the Wake Baptist Medical Center in Winston-Salem. So that part of the technology, when we talk about technology, you think of drones and the way we've used drones in the past with, bridge inspection and things like that. This is a whole new, area that we haven't thought about, but with COVID coming, to us so fast, our aviation division really did a great job of getting in front of that, talking with the industry and the business partners, and, what does that look like? It's even going some, now to look at, do we look at herbicide spray? What are some other use of our drones in that industry? We always talk about autonomous vehicles. I know Frank may mention some, but that's something that, if you think about autonomous vehicles, you have to have, the sensors backbone for that. We were very fortunate to have 2 infra grants that we were awarded by the federal government, and that's part of, that award was to have that backbone, hopefully to get from the western part of our state to the eastern part of our state, and be able to lay that backbone so we can then move off and, work on those sensors and being able to use and be able to plan for autonomous vehicles as we move forward. But that was just some of the things that we've done and some of the things that we're looking at for the future. Also, we were fortunate with House Bill 77. We had, some ability to make some changes there. Our bond sales, we pushed our fiscal year 20 bond and 21 year bond together. So hopefully that 700 million bond sale would go out probably around September. Still working through the Treasurer's office on that. So just those, possibilities are there. We also had the ability we had some state Garvey funds. Garvey funds are actually federal funds. For some reason, we had about $132 million in state cash sitting aside as a Garvey reserve. So we had that and also covered in House Bill 77 to help us with our cash situation, which many of you are very aware of. Glad to report today that we are above the floor. We've been above the floor for at least 3 or 4 weeks. It's a good sign for us. We were right about 400 million. Our floor is at 267 million. So we're continuing to increase our revenue. Also in House Bill 77, the fuel tax was set a floor for at 36.1 cents, but also it allowed us to make some changes to the formula on where that motor fuel goes, because in the past it was about 70 cents went to our highway fund, which is where our maintenance and response to storms and that type of programs, the things that we all care about, and the balance went to our trust fund. So that changed going over the next fiscal years. It was it goes to a 91% split, 91.9% split, and then it starts reducing for 22 and 23. But we're excited about that. We're excited the fact that we're seeing positive results in our revenue. People are driving. I know Frank will talk too about what we've been doing with our work from home abilities, but I've had a lot of people ask me, Eric, can we, our staff, can we continue to work from home? And I said, yeah, we're going to have one stipulation and one policy that you got to drive to the building that you work in, touch it, and drive back, because I need that motor fuel tax. But we really are, we're really trying to look at what does that look like for our revenue stream. So we've got our NC First Commission that is looking at alternatives to our revenue. What are some things we need to look at and possibly replace our gas tax? So just things like that we're looking at. There's always ways that we can look at some sort of technology to help us. It's been really fortunate to have Frank. I appreciate he and his team even more day by day, because we are really dependent on technology. It's something that we can't get our work accomplished without it. And Frank, I don't know if there's anything else that you want me to hit. If not, I'll pass it to you and we'll close it up together with questions.
No, I'm good. Whenever you're done, I'll jump in. Okay, you done?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Well, hope everybody's doing well out there. Thanks for inviting us to the meeting. I was here a couple of years ago, and I'm assuming you can hear me. I'm still real little on my screen, so I was supposed to jump up big, but I'm fine being little. Matter of fact, I did want to thank Brooks and thank Emily and Dave for getting us here today. It's been a really hectic year. And I also want to start off by taking this opportunity to thank Secretary Boyette too. About 3 years ago, Secretary Boyette was my boss at DOT. I was CIO. He was CIO, then I was CIO. I knew him when he was came out of maintenance in Division 4 and was working in the fiscal department. And we've been together a long time. And as a matter of fact, he was my boss until April again as state CIO and Secretary of DIT. Anyway, I'm Frank Wynn, CIO for DIT Transportation. Hope everybody's doing well and staying safe. This year's definitely been one for the books for sure. And I think when we start talking about autonomous vehicles, when we invent that DeLorean time machine, I don't think we have to put a 2020 dial on it. Nobody's going back to this year. But I have had a chance to meet a lot of people's dogs and kids. This teleconferencing is great. I usually have a corgi in here with me. I kicked her out because she's a little unruly. So she's not only in timeout, but I've got a personnel action going on her right now that we'll have to take care of after this meeting. She did not want to leave. But we're hoping things calm down later on this year and we get a vaccination for this thing and get a cure going forward. So what I'd like to talk about today, and this is, it's awkward doing these remotely like this. We do appreciate the opportunity and we're glad we have the technology that allows us to, but it's hard for me not to make eye contact with people and to get reactions. So this thing may last 3 minutes. I don't know. I talk kind of fast sometimes. But what I want to talk to you about today is about my organization. about some updates on initiatives that I discussed last time I spoke to the group a couple of years ago. I want to talk about some current initiatives and projects that we've got going on in DIT transportation. One of those being our DMV headquarters move to Rocky Mount and the technology involved with that. And then, like Secretary Boyette said, about some remote working issues that we have had to work out. So a little bit about my group. 2 years ago, I was the CIO of the IT department with Department of Transportation, and we transitioned over to state DIT by legislative mandate. We were optimized over, and somebody was going to call my group DIT DOT. And I said, we're not going to be DIT-DOT. So I changed it to DIT Transportation. So we're DITT, and I think that's worked out really well. We're part of DIT, but DOT is still our main customer. We do some grants and things for other agencies, and we do work a lot with vendors, and we have connections to almost every agency through our DMV group. But DOT is our #1 client, our #1 customer. I do work directly for the state CIO still, Tracy Dokes. I'm sure all of you know Tracy. This is her last week with DIT, and we're not sure who's going to be replacing her yet, but I'm sure they'll select somebody that we can work with. Basically, DOT pays for our payroll and benefits. They reimburse DIT, who pays us, but all of our contracts, including short-term staffing, as well as hardware and software vendor contracts, still belong to DOT. We have not moved any of that over. My group has about 450 state employees in it. We run about 150 contractors because we have a lot of work to do. Thankfully, we got a lot of technology projects going on. It seems pretty consistent, even with the economy. We whittle down and we prioritize, but technology just makes things better. It makes them run faster and more efficiently. So I think even in hard times, IT seems to be doing well. So hopefully you guys out in the audience here are doing well too. My group consists of several groups. We're really a soup to nuts IT shop. When we moved over to DIT in 2018, we basically doubled the size of the agency. We had about the 650 I was talking about. DIT has grown since then, of course, by adding and optimizing other agencies. But we have a full service SAP group in my shop. We have an engineering application development and services group. We have an application development services group specifically for DMV applications. We have our own application testing and training units. We have probably the largest GIS group in the state, I would think. For agencies, we have about 30 employees and maybe 20 contractors right now. We have one of the larger web teams that manages our SharePoint installation, as well as all the public-facing sites. And they manage a lot of our online DMV systems until we moved those to a mobile platform a couple of years ago. Still manage some, but we're moving those over. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. My group has a complete infrastructure team. We have our own data center at the DOT building called Century Center. We manage our own data center that's PCI compliant. So all of the DMV systems, the turnpike stuff that we do, anything that requires credit cards or any kind of payments, we can run in that data center. We have an integration team, network and firewall specific teams, database. We run Oracle DB2 Sybase, and we just implemented SAP HANA a couple of years ago. And my screen seems to be blowing up for something. Hopefully y'all aren't seeing what I'm seeing. It looks like a 1970s poster. Well, maybe I do want you to see what I'm seeing. It looks pretty cool. I've also got a client services desktop support group that includes an account management and a business relations management group. We have our own information security office, our own enterprise architecture group, and then our administrative groups like HR, the business office, and a full project management office that is running about 35 to 40 projects at any given time. The last time I spoke to the group a couple of years ago, we were working on then Secretary Trogdon's work groups initiative. And from an IT perspective, I want to talk a little bit about how they were categorized And basically it was preparing for future technology. So as a part of that, we were involved with 4 different work streams. One was decision support for technology, including data and analytics, unmanned aerial systems, like Secretary mentioned earlier. We implemented a portal for the drones, for licensing and information, as well as we've helped expand the use of drones within the DOT agency. One of the big issues we had with drones was security, because they all come with a connection, their own connection to a cloud-based system. And we have to lock that down to make sure that the DOT data is secure and safe. That's, to me, we're having a severe storm here. So if that's what's wrong with my screen, if I get kicked off, Secretary, jump back in. We also worked on some CAV projects, which is connected and automated vehicle projects, from a policy as well as an infrastructure and data management standpoint, which was really good timing, because now we're working through the Highway Safety Research Center at UNC on our Center of Excellence in Advanced Transportation Technologies research and development projects. And that's in conjunction with the R&D group at DOT. A few of the things we're working on there that you guys may be interested in, how the R&D projects work. We'll go a year or two fleshing everything out, coming out with reports, and hopefully come out with some products at the other end that, we'll need somebody to help implement. One is, again, the connected and autonomous vehicles, the impact of those on our current infrastructure, the Internet of Things. When I say Internet of Things, that goes from everything from light bulbs these days to refrigerators that can call you in your car and tell you, bring me a drink, on the way home. But to me, the IoT and the connected vehicles can be anything from traffic signals that talk to cars, even down the road, maybe pavement markings that can talk to the vehicle and let it know when it's in and when it's out of a particular lane. And emergency systems, like when you've got a fire truck, a police car, or an ambulance coming through, they can talk to the other vehicles, let them know it's coming before you even see it, and adjust traffic signals as needed. Those are some of the things they're looking at, as well as operational impacts on our current transportation systems. We're not set up too well for the Jetsons vehicles yet, but they're coming. We figured we've got a great roadway system for everything that sits on the ground, but eventually these drones are going to be flying their own traffic patterns in the sky. We're going to have to look at, instead of widths and laying grades on pavement, we're going to have to be looking at air lanes. What goes straight up from an Amazon factory to a certain elevation and then stays at that elevation until it gets to where it's going and goes straight down, so they're not running into each other and falling on people's heads, hopefully. Also, we're working on intelligent data and analytics that are just, logically, intuitively a part of the autonomous vehicles, and a plan for data readiness. What do we do with all that data? How do we make sure it's good data and it's clean data? So we're working on those things. Last time I was here, I wanted to cover this too. I discussed our information technology limited services contract that we were putting together through DIT. And I keep mentioning DIT, the Department of Information Technology, if anybody doesn't know that acronym. Currently, that's in place. We had over 160 proposals come in for 9 different categories of services. And we're about to submit the first really large statement of work for our saddles or our state automated driver's license system refactoring. We've been running COBOL code since 1994 on our stars and saddle systems, and we're trying to get those refactored into a manageable and supportable platform moving forward, so we can actually hire people out of college that know how to maintain these things and enhance and update those systems. Currently, we're supporting DOT and all of its major initiatives that involve IT, both strategic and tactical. We're running about 35 major projects. Currently, we got a few hundred initiatives running at any time, and those are efforts that don't rise to the size of a formal project, but still takes hours from our resources. We've also got hundreds of applications that we are in maintenance and operations on. A lot of those are on the engineering side because we write a lot. I've got 12 professional engineers in my group, civil engineers. A lot of them worked in DOT. Got PhDs in geotechnical engineering, that I really love to throw in a geotechnical project because he knows the business side and he knows the computer side. So we're really lucky to have had that relationship with DOT. And I'm a civil engineer. I did 15 years in the private sector before I started with DOT back in '99, as Dave said. And I was a guy when they said, in the '80s, who wants to run this computer thing? I raised my hand, and here I am today. I don't know how it happened. But some of the things we're specifically working on are identity and access management for our embedded employees and consulting firms that DOT relies on. We've been mandated at DOT to outsource a lot of our work to private companies, and we couldn't do the job today without those people. And a lot of them came from DOT and went over to those companies, so we support them, but we have to keep them separate also. When there's a security issue with one of our consulting firms and they've got people in our systems and their systems, we have to figure out a way to maintain that access so they can do their jobs and maintain the security of the data at DOT at the same time. Tying in with that, security is something we're always working on. We're working on a ferry wait time analysis right now is one of the specific things that ties into basically the need for a dashboard so that they can, the secretary can see what's going on. He said before, when he gets up in the morning, the first thing he does is looks at the dashboard and sees the status on a few things with DOT. I'm sure that cash is one of them, and I'm thankfully that one's looking a lot better in the last week or so. We're working with a company on optical character recognition. It's kind of a pilot right now for DMV scan files. We've scanned a lot of our files that have been backlogged for out-of-state convictions, and we're working through some technical details on that. So OCR is another technology that's been around a while, but for us, it's kind of new. We found a need for it. We implemented an online voter registration service and added duplicate driver's license and driver's license renewals to our MyDMV mobile platform this year and last year. We've already had vehicle registration in there for a couple of years. It's working well. And that was one of the things I talked about earlier, that I transitioned from my web team over to a mobility vendor. And it's working well. It allows my team to do more work for DOT and get out of that maintenance and operations bill role so much for that particular client of ours, DMV. This year was a short session. Came out with a lot of session laws that specifically included IT work related to DOT. I'm not even talking about the DIT ones, but the ones that affect us that we have to help DOT with are things like the data and reporting items that are coming out of HB 77. There's a ton of oversight, so we've got to help with that. Not only trying to figure out a tool to use to report, but how to collect the data, how to clean the data. Secretary's heard me say 1,000 times, I think no data is better than bad data, because we're making $1 million decisions on that data, and if we don't have it, we'll go find it. But if we think it's good and it's not, we're making bad decisions. So that's a big deal moving forward. For me, that's one of the things. Secretary's asked his staff to come up with 3 major strategic initiatives, basically, or philosophies moving forward. And that's one of mine, is data, analytics, and reporting. We're also, these session laws have extended DMV deadlines for vehicle registration and driver's license. That affects our stars and saddle systems. Our guys have to go in and make changes to those systems. The notices that go out to people are different. The late fees are different. We have to change all of that in our system to make it not a hardship on the citizen, because it's not their fault that all this is going on out here with COVID. The mobile platform I talked about has made that easier also. You can do this stuff from your phone. Session law waived road tests for first-time drivers. So they don't have to go in and, you can't sit 6 feet apart from a driver's license examiner while you're taking the mobile, the driving test. So that's been waived. They'll have to do it when they go back for their permanent license. So that's going to kind of, it's like a snake swallowing a basketball, just moving it down toward the tail. We'll hit it at some point. We'll help out with that. The LPAs and dealers have been affected. Dealer plate deadline extensions. Even the definition of a utility vehicle was modified. And then the last one, personal delivery devices, which is pretty cool. It's I guess a combination of drone technology and remote control vehicle technology, autonomous vehicle. I know they can't go on a roadway that's has a speed limit over 35 miles an hour. So I hope they've got some of those little flags on them like the dune buggies, because I got some kids that'll run over them. Anyway, we can look forward to that. We got a little reprieve on Real ID. The deadline for Real ID was in October 2020. Due to COVID, that was moved to October 2021. So we're still going to try to meet that deadline. We still had a few million people to get their Real IDs. And on top of that, recently, just in the last couple of weeks, DHS and the U.S. Senate has approved a bill, which is, if passed by the House, is going to allow the electronic submittal of ID verification documents. So you don't have to take your documents in a DMV office. You can submit them electronically. Then when you go into the office, hopefully it'll be a much shorter visit. What we're trying to do there is shorten the lines at the DMV offices. That's always an issue. But the DMV commissioner and that entire division has worked really hard this year to make that as smooth as possible. And last year, this year wasn't so hard because nobody could go in, but they're still working. Let's see. Also included in that is allowing the use of electronic driver's license and ID, which is huge. So again, maybe that'll save us time, save us money down the road if we end up sometime not printing driver's license for people. You can maintain those and update them electronically, and it's instantly on your phone or whatever device you're using at that point. But as I said, they're still waiting House approval on that. I want to talk a little bit about the DMV headquarters move to Rocky Mount, because that's been a big effort for DMV as well as IT. We've had to move our data center out of the current DMV headquarters to the building in Rocky Mount. They've got a 5-building campus up there. It's interconnected with fiber, so we had to check all that. We were checking conduits and found some of them full of mud, so we've had to address that. We've had a MCNC has been up there putting in a high availability, a second fiber line, which will help. And I'm going to have about 10 employees stationed there full time. We'll maintain a small warehouse function and all our client services and desktop support for that building. And part of the eastern part of the state will be run out of that office. But other than moving the data center and all the servers, the scanning features and all that, we've also been working with DIT to get their phone systems up to speed. They're partly digital, and they're partly not. They're still analog on some stuff for the call center. So it gets complicated when you start digging into those things and trying to make sure it works when they move up there. We're also helping with the office transitions. They actually started 2 weeks ago with the first group, which is vehicle registration, moving into the first building up there. And we're starting with building 5. And that's going to be complete. It may be complete today. They're moving on the weekend. My guys are going in Monday and Tuesday and making sure everything's connected and working. And they've been doing a great job. We got all the firewalls opened up. So far, everything has worked as soon as we plugged it in and tried it. We've been really lucky and keep our fingers crossed. We're also testing new unified communication systems and the AV up there. I've got some stuff on loan that I had borrowed from Cisco. I'll give you that plug, Dave, since you guys are sponsoring this. The room kits that I was testing out in my office, I moved over to DMV headquarters over on Pool Road, New Bern Avenue. so that the commissioner and the deputies can try that out. Because my goal was that when they get to Rocky Mount, they already know how to use this stuff and they don't lose any time. And if there's one thing, if anything that COVID has helped, it's given us an opportunity to test a lot of this remote working and technology that they're going to be utilizing in Rocky Mount. Let's see, they moved into the first building yesterday. It's going to continue until about mid-October. They've got one 6-story office building there and 4 outbuildings for about 130,000 square feet, I believe. So it's a big endeavor. And there's a lot of people in DMV that are moving 60 miles from where they live to go to work. So it's been a bit of a struggle, but everything seems to be working as well as possible moving up there. They're also moving the Raleigh tag office out of the DMV headquarters building into a new facility in Raleigh because by law they can't have one outside of Wake County. I think Mecklenburg and Cumberland are the only 3 counties that can have a tag office that is run by DMV. And tell me if I'm wrong on that, Secretary. You were commissioner, Haven. Okay. So we got a lot going on. I wanted to talk some too about the remote working solutions that we have been able to take advantage of this year. DOT didn't even have a teleworking policy when COVID hit. We had one at DIT, but I had just implemented it about 6 months before for my group, and we were just allowing people to go home for 1 to 2 days a week to kind of test this out. Well, we got smacked in the head with 9,000 users that had to go home at the same time. And all of my 650, except for about 15 people in my network team and that work in the warehouse, lifting stuff, they can't work remotely. I've got over 600 people have been working from home since March. And it's working really well, other than I think they work a lot more than they did in the office. Because you don't get up and walk to a meeting. You hit this button, you hit that button again, you're back in another meeting. And the people that work from 6 to 8 want you to start from 6 to 4, want you to be available at 6. And the ones that work from 9 to 8 want you to be available at 8. So some of these days, 9 and 10 hours averaging for everybody. But I think we've proven with the technology that we can work from home. And I'm telling my folks the same thing Secretary did, that's fine, but you got to drive in. You got to at least go to McDonald's and get a biscuit, and go back home so we can get some gas money, because our goal is to help him stay above that floor for the cash. But we're currently running about 1,200 users per day through our VPN solution. And these are mainly DOT-owned laptops that people had before we went home that had the VPN client on them, as well as some high-end CAD machines and some photogrammetry machines that they have the extra power. These are the souped-up machines that run these intense processes. We allowed folks to take them home, and we ran VPN on them so they can get back and forth to their files. But mainly, those are just the people with the laptops. For the people that did not have a laptop and were using PCs in their offices, we're running about 1,300 a day concurrently per day users on a remote PC solution that allows them to connect from their home PC to the PC sitting on.
Looks like Frank might have dropped off there briefly.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll come back on. Eric, do you want to pick up on what he was saying, or maybe get us to where we can take some questions?
Yeah, it's up to you. I can finish. Yeah, we've had a
Here
good.
it is.
Am I back?
Yep, there you
You're
go.
back.
He's back.
Am I back? That was, as my grandma used to say, there was a streak of thunder out here a second ago, and something shut off. So, sorry, I'll pick up somewhere in there. A lot of our users can do their jobs using Office 365. All they need is email, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, things like that. So we're providing solutions for those. And the other thing that we're implementing now is when people start going back to work, we're creating policies so that everybody scans their machine before it gets back in. Because if you leave your VPN off, you're not getting patches, you're not getting security updates. So we've got to ensure nobody comes back in, and they maybe buying somebody a birthday present on the DOT laptop. They don't bring anything nasty with them when they come back in. So that's a key initiative for us. And the last thing, and I'll be quiet, is to boil down the 3 initiatives that Secretary was asking about. I think mine are identity and access management, security as always, and data analytics, reporting, and dashboarding. That's what we're going to be working on for the next year. So that was a lot of words. And I apologize if anybody fell asleep. It's just weird not stopping to look at anybody except Brooks and Secretary. They bailed out on me.
Well, Frank, thank you. I don't know, Secretary Boyette, if you want to say any kind of concluding words, and then I'll toss a question or 2 your way, and we'll take it from there.
That sounds good. I think, Brooks, the only thing I want to say is, these times have really proven that, how important not only technology is, but our broadband needs across our state. So I'm just proud of what Frank and his team is doing. They really support our agency very well. It's good to have them on our team.
Well, that's great. And thank you both for being part of this. I tell you, if Frank ever runs out of things to do, you ought to let him take a crack at rewording your employee handbook. At least it would be entertaining to read.
Absolutely.
I want to pick up, there's a question that's been submitted, and I think, Frank, that you may have actually answered half of this question, but I'll ask it anyway if you want to expound on it. And that is, does the DMV currently have online scheduling available and the ability to receive documents for Real ID? I think you were saying that's not yet approved, but is in the works, possibly.
Right, and you're breaking up a little bit. It may be my broadband in this storm, but I think I heard you online scheduling as well as document transmittal. Is that right?
Right.
We do. We have online scheduling now for our DMV offices. Due to we don't have it open 100%, if you want to call it that. We've got it for most all of the offices that are open, if not all of them. But we're only going out 2 weeks at a time because of the staff shortages that DMV are having. And I think it's working great. The only issue we've had that we're trying to correct is when an office has no availabilities, it doesn't show up on the schedule, which is confusing because people don't know if it's just maybe it's a glitch and they have to go somewhere to get that office. But we're trying to get that fixed. So even if it's completely full, it'll show you that. As far as the documents for Real ID, you still have to take the documents in because by federal mandate, you have to present those documents to the DMV examiner. And we went to Washington to make sure we knew what present was, and they told us. They said, walk in the office and hand it to somebody.
That's great. Thank you for that. We have another question that's been submitted. Frank, you mentioned ID management. How does that map to the effort to replace NCID statewide?
I didn't hear. I'm hearing like, you remember Max Headroom?
Yeah.
I'm hearing like every other syllable.
Well, Eric, can you hear me smoothly?
Yeah, you're smooth on my end. It must be,
okay.
His storms must be hitting him hard. I can take that one, Frank, I think.
Secretary, I hear him the same way, so it must be my connection somehow.
Okay, I'll take that one. So
all right, sorry.
The answer, since I haven't been removed from DIT that long, so the effort that Frank's talking about with the ID management, it'll play in with the NCID replacement at DIT. So there'll be a partnership that they're working on together to see how that rolls.
Well, Eric, while I have you, let me ask you more of a broader question. We've been joking a little bit about needing to have people drive more so that you can get that gas money in. But in all seriousness, that is a major issue, not just because of COVID having suppressed amount of miles all of us are driving, but even before that, there's a lot of discussion about what's the right way to raise money in the first place. And if cars are becoming increasingly efficient, more and more people are moving to electric vehicles or at least hybrid, then this is going to only be a downward pressure on miles on gas purchases. So how serious is the discussion about moving to an entirely different model? Like, how many miles did you drive on North Carolina roads in the past year? And how in the world would we know that? You can't just look at your odometer one year to the next because some of those miles are driven in other states.
Yeah, and Brooks, that's a great question. And I was glad to see when I arrived that there was an NC First Commission that Secretary Trotton had actually kicked off, that their goal is to bring back, it's a great group of individuals, very business professional, some transportation background, but really more a lot of your analytic and business people that are around the table that, can really help us look at opportunities, options. So one of their goals is to bring forward, hopefully before November, a list of here are some options that we recommend that we talked to the General Assembly about. One of them is VMT that you mentioned, the vehicle miles traveled. We're actually doing a pilot with the I-95 coalition. I'm actually one of the participants. You actually have a device that you plug into your car, and it actually measures your mileage. It also does some things that I'm kind of a little weary about. It tells you if you're speeding or if you brake too hard. So some of that information, you don't want to share, but it's important to note though that it is a privacy issue, that we're careful to talk about that as well. But it doesn't track, who it is. It tracks, to your point. We can't wait till you have a yearly inspection on your vehicle to get those mileage rates in. But that allows us to you can do, I think Colorado and Utah and now Florida is looking at, a cent per mile, and instead of cent per tax on our gas tax. So, there's a lot of options. Tolling comes up. You have, subscription based. Do you pay, like you do for your cell phone? You pay a subscription per month that says, I need an unlimited plan because I drive a lot. So, or my vehicle's heavier because, the weight of a vehicle really stresses out our infrastructure more than a lighter weight car or automobile. So, those things all play in the fact of what does it look like for the future. So the NC First Commission is really doing a great job of trying to dive into, here are some options and here's the ones we may think are better than others. Obviously, we're looking at other states. We're looking at the industry, asking industry partners, to share with us, what do you see? The tolling authority is really, they're ahead of most people on the technology side. So we're really looking to them for, for advice too as well. Doesn't mean we toll every road, but just the technology itself and, what can we utilize from, their advances.
It's my understanding that one of the quirks about tolling is that you can only institute a toll on a new road that you're going to build. You can't take a road that's already been built and suddenly toll it. And I think that the theory behind that is the money has been raised and spent to build that road already. And so it's not quite the same thing. However, when you do the belt line around Raleigh or other toll areas, the outer loop, it allows to speed up improvements, widenings, or new construction, often by 20 years or more in some cases, I remember reading. So how do some of these things you've just described, whether in terms of new ways to raise revenue, does it make that rule obsolete potentially? Does it change the nature of that rule? Talk about how this affects the ability to move faster on projects.
Sure. And there was a federal option where we could actually toll one of our arteries or one of our infrastructure facilities. But I think that has sunsetted since we started in the new administration. But it always plays into effect of not only, just that, Brooks, if you think about autonomous vehicles, and to Frank's point, at the last transportation summit, we had an air taxi. So will we need roadways? What does that future look like? So all of that, we have to get our hands around what does that future look like? And is it a 5-year future? Is it a 10-year future or a 20-year future? Where does that play? So what does that look like for us? And I think, we're really trying to make sure that we plan appropriately. And I'm obviously, as Frank mentioned, every morning I get up, I do look at our dashboards. I look at that cash status. I look at our expenses and our AP accounts, and where are we? Because it always looks to me about, when we look at our capital programs, can we afford what we're doing? And that's what we got to continue to do. And I think, to your point around not only our North Carolina gas tax, but also our federal tax that we get, that comes in for us from the feds, because all that goes to our capital side when it comes in from our federal partners. So it's very interesting times. It's very exciting times because, I mean, who would have thought we would have actually seen an air taxi that actually, is in line to be deployed. So it actually can work and will work. So they just won't let us fly it. I was disappointed. I wanted to be the first one in there to fly it, but I think Secretary Trotty and I were fighting over who was going to fly it first, and neither one of us won. So anyway, it was fun.
Yeah, I saw that. That was an impressive looking device. If nothing else, we'll see how it goes with people in it. I'm going to ask you two more questions to wrap us up with this segment. The last two that have been submitted, I'm going to read them as written. IAM seems important. Will there be a decision on the bid DIT put out?
I'll take that one since Secretary's not in DIT anymore. We hope so. I know it's been out once and was canceled. It's out again. I've got some folks that are on the evaluation committee, but I'm not really involved in the decision making and not really involved in when the bid went out, the RFP part of that. But I can say from our standpoint, yeah, we're anxious to see it go out.
And then maybe for the Secretary, how has COVID impacted the federal funding NCDOT receives annually? And how do you see this impact on IT projects, especially without an approved state budget?
That's very, very good point. So we, our federal funding, we're waiting on our FAST Act to be authorized. I actually was on the phone earlier with Senator Burr, and I've got a call with Senator Tillis this afternoon after this call. So they're very engaged. We're engaged with our partners, and they understand the need for our transportation dollars, our infrastructure dollars here. And it does tie directly to, our investment, not just in technology, but our investment period in what we do. All of our partners, I look at it as we're the biggest developer in the state of North Carolina. We employ a lot of people, not our staff necessarily, but if you look at the industry that we support. So it's very important for us to have not only those federal dollars, but, our state dollars as well. But we're continuing to push hard. Hopefully we actually do. One of the things I didn't mention is we have a $300 million COVID, I say a reserve sitting aside because currently with the CARES Act, we can't do revenue replacement, but all of our congressional leaders are working hard to have that adjusted so we can do some revenue replacement with that $300 million. The General Assembly has been fortunate. They've worked with us and they've moved that deadline out to September. So we continue to see the ability to partner and work, and I think all of the states are suffering. All the transportation areas are suffering across all of our 50 states, and we're pushing hard. Our AASHTO, our agency, our sponsors are really pushing hard to try to make sure everyone understands that we can put people to work. That's what we do. So it's a tough time right now. We all are doing everything we can, but we have to be fiscally responsible too.
Well, I'll close with a broader question. Just I think a lot of our members would be interested in, and it has to do with as you construct new roadways or renovate or expand existing. A lot of the companies that are involved in fiber, the telcos, the various companies that are involved in the kinds of hardware and equipment that's needed to transmit high-speed data in a way, and images and all sorts of things in a way that would be used on roadways that can accommodate autonomous vehicles and so forth. Talk about how you are already or will be working with business partners to make sure that you're taking advantage of doing that kind of work once rather than having to come back and do it later once a road is built or once a new road is put in place.
Absolutely. So we've initiated and working with, actually when I was at DIT, with our broadband infrastructure office on a dig once policy. So as we're working through a roadway and we have the opportunity to either lay conduit or conduit and fiber, we're working to do that now. So to your point, we do not have to have another encroachment agreement for a vendor to come in and expend those dollars. If we can consume and absorb those expenses while we're had that project open, we want to do that, and we want to try to do that as much as we can. we've talked to our planning department to try to go ahead and put those plans in place. So when if we're widening a road, to your point earlier, or if it's new construction. But it's a continuous. One of the things that we also need to look at is fiber to last. Is that where we're headed in the future?
Right.
Is it something that do we need to look at instead of fiber as a station that we've got satellites that are pushing data down to us, or we're pushing data up? So do we need to have more square footage for a station, to receive that information and push that information? But you still have to have some sort of backbone to get to and from. So I think we'll always have, the fiber discussion, but I don't know how, it may minimize a little bit with our future, but we're continuing to look at those options. Anytime anybody's got ideas, we love to hear them. We reach out to our partners all the time.
Great. Well, Eric and Frank, thank you both so much for making the time to join us. Good luck with your call with Senator Tillis this afternoon, and also for your service to North Carolina. Both of you, appreciate it so much. And
Thank you for
your partnership with us.
Thank you for having us.
We're going to turn now to Ed Turlington from the Brooks Pierce firm. I mentioned him earlier. Many of you know him well and have for the 15 years or so that his firm has been representing the association on its legislative affairs. He'll give a legislative update, and which we'll momentarily share with you on the screen. If Emily can hear me, this would be the time to put that up. And if you have questions, we'll take those again in the Q&A section. I'll be glad to work a couple in at the end, but this will be a brief segment for us to round out our session today. So Ed, welcome to NC Tech's Government Vendor Network, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Brooks. And our firm appreciates the opportunity to work with all of you, and I bring you greetings from my colleagues, Matt Bales and Katie Kingsbury. Great to have our friend Dave Denny and Cisco as a sponsor today. Many of you know of that company's presence, which I think is in North Carolina is their second largest United States presence. What you might not know is their current CEO, Chuck Robbins, grew up in Rocky Mount and is a graduate of Chapel Hill. So hopefully that benefits all of us. Before moving into the brief presentation, I want to add my word of thanks to Secretary Boyette and CIO Wynn. I think I'm correct on what I'm about to say, that not only are these strong leaders, but they have both achieved first in North Carolina history. To my knowledge, Secretary Boyette is the first person to be confirmed by the state Senate for 2 different cabinet positions. And to my knowledge, CIO Wynn is the first person to have that title, DIT/transportation. Frank, you notice I didn't say DIT/dot, so congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for all you do. So our handout, which will be posted on the NC Tech website, as always, is meant to be a resource material for all of you. It is divided into 3 sections. First of all, item number 1 is various actions taken by the governor related to the virus. You know, he recently issued a new executive order extending the Safer at Home Phase 2 through at least August 7th. And I think it's important for us all to remember that is through at least August 7th. And then the other thing I listed there is the Strong Schools plan that the governor has had substantial leadership on, as has the State Board of Education. Many of you know the K-12 school year is going to start for most students on August 17th, and for many students will be remote learning. The second Roman numeral is a resource from the April General Assembly session, where the legislature allocated $1.6 billion, most federal money, for a variety of items. And the Secretary and Frank have already touched on these, but healthcare, transportation, education. If you're looking for something you think was enacted during that session, those are the places to look. The first bill is more policy. The second is money. The third Roman numeral deals with the recently completed session in late June, making various appropriations for fiscal year 21, which, as you know, began on July 1. Now, when you hear all of us talk about a shortfall for 2021, what that means is that if the budget was X in FY20 and it was projected to be X in FY21, largely due to the virus and its impact on revenue and spending, we started in that minus $4 billion hole. So what the General Assembly and the governor worked together to do in this most recent session is take the actions that are listed on this page and on the back page. I will not read them to you, but if you're looking for a specific topic, economic development, Medicaid, liability limits for when somebody unfortunately catches the virus, there are a lot of resources there that we tried to put in one place for you to look at. I will note towards the end of page 2, you'll see there are a couple of tax bills that were enacted, but unlike past sessions, they're really not significant tax changes. That 1079 did have a provision related to sales taxation on certain educational content that can be downloaded, but broadly not impacting the IT industry. And then I wanted to list one bill that's still eligible. S284 has a number of things related to IT, including cybersecurity money, and that, since we are not adjourned for the year, that bill may be considered later. So what happens now, and this is Roman numeral 4. As you probably know, the General Assembly is currently scheduled to reconvene on September 2nd. The primary purpose to deal with any unallocated federal money related to the virus. The Secretary mentioned, and many of us hold the same hope, that Congress will allow states to spend some of the already appropriated federal money for things such as transportation. The reason we put August in question mark is, you know, at this very moment, Congress is negotiating a COVID, I think it's package number 5, that may produce a lot of money coming to the states. If so, and that's adopted soon, Governor Cooper has indicated he may want the legislature to meet prior to September 2nd to deal with that money. So I certainly don't know that there's going to be an August session, but I hold that as a possibility. And then in closing, Brooks, I put contact information for Matt and I at the bottom. We work for the association. You are members of the association. So we work for you, and we welcome any calls or emails if you want more details. So thank you very much, Brooks.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate, as always, the good insights, and not just tracking, but helping us understand some of this stuff and timing of it, and what may be coming up ahead. So we'll keep an eye out, and we'll certainly share as warranted with our members. And on that note, as Ed noted, we will be sending out a follow-up to this meeting today that has a number of links in it that we've referred to, and it will include either an attachment or a link to this document so that all of you will have that handy and available. As you look ahead, our 4th quarter Government Vendor Network is scheduled and will take place on the afternoon of October the 20th. That is already on our event schedule. The speaker to be determined, but you can register for it now. nctech.org/events is where you'd want to go to see our calendar and look at anything that's coming up that you like, but the vendor meeting on October 20th is there. And there may be another one worked in. As most of you know, the newly appointed state CIO is actually leaving in a matter of days to become the new president and CEO of MCNC, an entity that's also a member of our association and a very important institution in our state for lots of reasons that most of you are familiar with. And so there will be an interim CIO named any moment, as best I know. But when that happens, we will try to connect with that person and perhaps have a special session with them between now and the time that eventually a permanent CIO might be named. So I want to thank you all for being with us today, and to Cisco for being our sponsor for today, as well as providing the platform we're using for the session. And I want to encourage you to pay attention to all the new things we're adding. Everything's virtual these days. For the most part, with one fun exception, we have a CIO-oriented golf classic every year. That's coming up on August the 25th. It'll be in Pinehurst again, and all systems go at the moment. So you can find out all about that at nctech.org/golf. And we would encourage you and your companies to be involved with that if you have the availability on that day. So with that, we'll close it out. Thanking our speakers, sponsors, and all of you for attending. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Brooks.